The stone lights up after 3 seconds for everyone else. For this guy, a whole minute has passed. The overseer has already opened his mouth to declare failure. And then, right before the boy's eyes, a golden glow flared up. A glow no one else in the hall could see. 18-year-old Cade Winters stands before the altar in the Hall of Beginnings, his palm resting on the warm stone. Behind him, his mother clenches her hands until her knuckles turn white. His father pretends he doesn't care. The stone is silent for 3 seconds. 5. 10. The keeper frowns. 20. His mother stops breathing, and it's worse than any scream. 30. And then, at the 1-minute mark, a golden window unfolds before Cade's eyes. Bright, alive. Lines burn within it that only he can see. And for everyone else, a pale blue square flashes in the air with a single letter. F. Observation. Rank F. The lowest possible. A joke of the gods. The overseer offers his condolences in the voice of a man who has repeated this 100 times. Sorry for the visit. Skill determined. The Pantheon thanks you for your patience. Cade doesn't hear him. He stares intently at the golden window. The lines flicker and form words. Skill. Study. True rank not determined. And below, a note that sends a chill down his spine. The Pantheon of Beginnings does not approve of this skill. Don't tell anyone, seriously. Cade removes his hand from the altar. He turns around. His mother tries to smile but can't. His father places a hand on his shoulder. The hand is heavy, heavier than usual, because it's weighed down by pity, not support. It's okay, son. Taverns always need hands. Cade looks at them and thinks one cold, clear thought. None of you must know. Ever. He'll be the winter's poor, unlucky boy. He'll wash mugs and feel for smiling when the neighbors look away. And inside, he'll be building something this world has never seen. He smiles, guiltily, just as an F rank should. Sorry, Mom. His mother hugs him too tightly. That's how they hold on to what's already slipping away. Over her shoulder, Cade catches a new line in the golden window. Start with what's close by. Your father's knee hurts. They leave the hall. His father limps ahead, more heavily than this morning. Rain is coming, and his knee always aches before rain. Cade knows all about this limp. 8 years ago, his father tore his knee lifting a barrel. His mother treated it, but her B-rank healing only worked on cuts and fevers. Old joints were beyond her. Since then, his father has walked with a cane. The cane stands by the bar, and everyone has gotten used to it. Haven Gate is a border town in the north of the Valtor Empire. Stone houses. A wall. Beyond the wall lie the wildlands, from which monsters, smarter and more vicious than before, have been pouring in for the past 3 years. The Iron Knee Tavern feeds half the local adventurers. My father opened it 20 years ago and named it after his own knee. No one laughed, but the name stuck. Cade grew up behind that bar. He's been washing mugs since he was 10, serving food since he was 12, listening to adventurers every evening and remembering everything. By the way a man holds his spoon, he can tell where he's from. By the way an adventurer sits at the table, he can see what skills he has and where he's hurting. 18 years of observation have made him the best cataloger of others' abilities in town. Only it was of no use, until this morning. They walk into the tavern. His father immediately starts. His mother sits in the corner and takes out her sewing. Her hands are shaking. She isn't sewing, but simply holding the needle to keep her fingers busy. Cade ties on his apron and wipes down the counter. Everything is as usual, as if the world hadn't turned upside down an hour ago. And he looks at his mother, at her gestures by the cauldron in the evening, at the water's temperature, at the herbs in the pouches on her belt. The golden window glows with a warm hue in the corner of his vision. Everyday healing. Study. 6%. Not much. Almost nothing. But these are the first 6% of a new life, and they weigh more than any A rank in any hall. In the evening, father limps more heavily. Rain drums on the roof. Adventurers crowd into the hall. It smells noisily warm of roasted meat and wet leather. Cade works in silence, carries food, collects mugs, smiles guiltily when asked, "So, how did it go?" "Fine." Observation. F. Rank. People look away. They pat him on the shoulder. "It's not about the rank, kid." But everyone knows it's about the rank. The entire empire stands on a single law. One person, one skill, bestowed by chance on the day of coming of age. Ranks from F to S, and rank is destiny. A ranks join the guard and the aristocracy. B and C are the foundation of society. F ranks are a joke. When the last guest leaves, Cade goes to the kitchen. His mother is preparing the evening decoction for his father. Every evening, the same thing. Hot water, 3 pinches of mint, licorice root, a spoonful of honey. The decoction eases the pain for a couple of hours. It doesn't cure it. It just lets his father make it to bed without a cane. Cade freezes in the doorway and watches. His mother waits until the water stops bubbling and only then drops in the mint. The golden window flashes. 7%. Cade takes note. He goes to the pantry. Last week, an old herbalist from Crossfallow came in here and complained about his joints while sitting at the corner table. Cade served him dinner and noticed how the man crumbled a piece of dried ginger root between his fingers and pressed it against his wrist. 10 minutes later, the herbalist stopped wincing. The golden window wasn't there yet, but Cade remembered. Because he remembers everything. And now, a line is lit up in the window. Herbalism E rank. Study. 41%. 41. Because he'd been observing herbs his whole life, long before the altar. The skill simply tallied what he already knew. Cade takes out the ginger root. Dry, yellow, smelling of earth. He takes the licorice that his mother puts in the decoction and adds something she never adds, because that's not how they do things at her school. She learned from her mother, who learned from hers, and the chain stretches back 3 generations, and none of them ever saw a herbalist from Crossfallow put ginger on a sore joint. Cade brews it all together, lets it steep, drops in a spoonful of honey, because her father likes sweets. That's important. Not for the taste of the brew, but so that her father takes the first sip for the taste and not for the cure, and doesn't set the mug aside. Cade walks into the living room. Dad is rubbing his knee against the counter, a familiar gesture. He doesn't even notice what he's doing. Cade sets the mug in front of him. "Don't fuss over me, son." Cade shrugs. "It's not medicine. Just tea from our kitchen. If you don't like it, I'll pour it out." His father grunts, takes the mug, takes a sip so as not to be rude. Cade goes back to the mugs, washes them, doesn't turn around, counts the minutes. 5, 10, 15. His father finishes his drink. He stands up. He walks to the shelf for salt, and he isn't limping. 1 step, another, another. He freezes. He looks at his leg as if it were someone else's, as if it were something impossible. He slowly turns toward his son. Cade washes the mug and doesn't look up. His heart is pounding so hard it feels like the whole room can hear it. But his face is calm. In the corner, his mother puts down her sewing. She saw it. How her husband stood up. How he walked. How he didn't limp. For 8 years he'd limped and she couldn't do anything, and now here he is walking straight, while her son stands with a wet mug and pretends nothing happened. "Cade, where did you learn that?" His mother's voice is quiet. Cade sets down the mug, turns around, smiles that very guilty smile. The tavern always needs a mother's helping hands. I was just listening. His mother looks at him for a long time, the way she's never looked at him before, as if she's seeing him for the first time. Then she nods and goes back to her sewing, but her hands no longer tremble. That evening, for the first time in 8 years, his father goes to bed without his cane. The cane remains standing by the bar, lonely, unnecessary. Cade lies in the darkness under the roof and stares at the ceiling. A golden window hangs before his eyes. Everyday healing, study, 9%. Motivation is high, 3% a day. If only 3 every day. No, that doesn't count. Every skill requires its own time and understanding. F-rank hours, C-rank weeks, A-rank months. This isn't a level-based game. This is true mastery. You can't rush. You can't be greedy. You can't draw attention. Cade closes his eyes. Tomorrow he'll wash mugs again, serve food, smile guiltily. It'll be F-rank observation. And in the meantime, he watches, listens, memorizes, and builds, quietly, brick by brick. For his father, for his mother, for everyone who left the hall with downcast eyes. The golden window flashes one last time. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is a long day. Cade smiles and falls asleep. The morning began with his father came down the stairs without his cane. Cade stood behind the counter, wiping down the tables. He heard footsteps upstairs, steady, without a wobble. Without the usual creak of the floorboard under his right foot when his father shifted his weight to take the pressure off his knee. His father appeared on the stairs and stopped. He looked down, at his feet, then at Cade. "Good morning, Dad." His father grunted. He came down, every step steady. He walked behind the counter, picked up a rag, started wiping next to his son, silently. But Cade saw how his father moved, a little wider than usual, a little more confident, like a man getting to know his own body all over again. The cane was standing by the counter where he'd left it yesterday. His father looked at it, didn't pick it up. Cade didn't say anything. An hour later, his mother came in. She stood in the kitchen doorway and watched her husband. He was carrying a keg from the pantry. He carried it with both hands and walked steadily. For 8 years, he hadn't lifted anything heavier than a pot. His mother shifted her gaze to Cade. He was washing a mug. He didn't look up. She opened her mouth, closed it, went into the kitchen. A minute later, a sound came from there. His mother was brewing her morning potion, her usual one. Mint, licorice, honey. Cade listened, memorized. A golden window flashed in the corner of his vision. Everyday healing. Study, 10%. Every time he watched his mother, the percentage crept up. Slowly, but it crept. The day at the tavern went as usual. Breakfast for the guests. 2 C-rank adventurers who had spent the night upstairs. A man with the iron fist skill and a woman with the quick feet skill. Cade served them scrambled eggs and bread. The man ate quickly. He gripped the fork with his whole palm. A melee fighter. You could tell by his grip. The woman ate neatly, her left hand under the table. A habit. A scout. Keeping one hand free in case she had to run or grab a weapon. Cade knew all this even without that window. But now the window confirmed it. Skill detected, iron fist, rank C, direct observation of use required to begin study. Skill detected, quick feet, rank C, direct observation of use required to begin learning. Cade turned away. Not now, not these skills, not these people. They'd be gone in an hour, and he wouldn't see them again. C-rank skills required weeks of observation. Wasting time on passing visitors made no sense. He knew what he needed. His mother's healing. It's close. It's every day, and it will help his father. That's the first thing. After breakfast, Cade went to help his father in the cellar. Barrels, supplies, pickles. His father worked and talked about the tavern, about how he started 20 years ago with 1 room and 3 tables, about the fights that happened here, about the adventurers who came and never returned. Cade listened. But he wasn't looking at the barrels. He was looking at his father, at the way he moved. His father was a former fighter. The iron skin skill, D rank. Not offensive, defensive. His skin hardened upon impact. Not to the hardness of iron, of course. D rank is D rank. But enough to withstand a punch or a glancing sword blow. His father hadn't used the skill in years. Why would a tavern keeper need iron skin? But the skill hadn't disappeared. Skills never disappeared. One for life. Cade waited for the moment. And the moment came. His father was lifting a barrel onto a shelf, a heavy one. His arms tensed. And for a split second, Cade saw it. A barely noticeable change in the skin on his father's forearms. A hardening, invisible to the naked eye. But Cade wasn't ordinary. 18 years of observation. He knew what skin looked like when muscles tensed. And he knew what skin looked like when a skill activated. There was a difference. A golden window flashed. Skill detected. Iron skin. Rank D. Study initiated. 1%. 1%. Good. Enough. His father set the barrel down. He wiped his forehead, looked at his son. "What are you standing there for? Hand me the next one." Cade handed it over, and touched his father's hand as he passed the barrel. Accidentally. That's what it looked like. Golden window, iron skin, study, 3%. Direct contact at the moment of activation accelerated the study. Cade remembered. They worked in the basement for an hour. Cade found 2 opportunities to touch his father just as he was lifting something heavy. By the end of the hour, iron skin was at 8%. A D-rank skill. Simple, straightforward. Hours, not weeks. The golden window hadn't lied. After lunch, Cade helped his mother in the kitchen. It was routine. He always helped. Chopped vegetables, washed dishes, carried water. But today, he watched. Every movement his mother made. The way she crushed mint between her fingers. Exactly 3 pinches. The way she checked the water's temperature with the back of her hand. The whisper she uttered over the potion. Not a spell, just a habit. His mother whispered too, and his mother's mother. 3 generations of healers in the family, and they all whispered the same words. The golden window flickered quietly. Everyday healing. 12%. 13. He was learning. Not like a student in school, like a child who watches his mother and absorbs everything. Only now he had a tool that turned absorption into knowledge. By evening, the first guests arrived at the tavern. Miller Hale with his daughter Linnea. Cade had known them his whole life. Linnea was his age, red braids, freckles. A laugh you could hear 3 houses away. They'd grown up together, ran across rooftops, stole apples from old Graham, sat on the wall and watched adventurers head through the gate into the wild lands. Linnea had acquired a skill 3 days ago. Precise grinding. D rank. Household. Flour. Grain. A mill. She laughed as she told the story. Of course, a miller's daughter got a miller's skill. The gods have a sense of humor. But Cade could see that her laughter was more subdued than usual, and her eyes weren't sparkling with joy. Linnea sat down at the table. Her father ordered a beer, she ordered tea. Cade brought it, set down the mug. Linnea looked up at him. "So, F rank. We're both losers now." Cade sat down across from her. Just for a minute. Her father didn't scold her for taking breaks if the hall was half empty. "You're not a failure. Precision grinding is a good skill." Linnea snorted. "Good. I can grind flour a little better than a mill, which already grinds just fine. Thanks, Pantheon. A dream come true." Cade looked at her freckles, at her red braids, at the hands she hid under the table because her fingers were calloused from the millstones, and at the dark circles under her eyes that weren't there before. Just like your mom. Linnea fell silent. The laughter faded, just like that. Linnea's mother was sick. For 6 months now. Something inside her. No one could say exactly what. Healer Winters had tried. Her skill didn't work. It was too deep, too complicated. B-rank healing could handle superficial issues, but what was eating away at Linnea's mother from the inside was something else. Cade nodded. He looked away, because a new line flashed in the golden window, and he didn't want Linnea to see him staring into space. Recommendation: study healing until 40% before attempting to treat chronic conditions. Current level, 13%. 13 out of 40. That's weeks, maybe a month. Cade clenched his fists. A month is a long time. For him. For Linnea's mother, it might be even longer. But he couldn't rush it. The golden window said 40%, not 30, not 20, 40. That meant that below that threshold, he would do more harm than good. Cade stood up. I need to work. Linnea nodded. Okay, go. F rank. She smiled. He smiled back. He went behind the counter, and for the rest of the evening, he worked with a face that gave nothing away. But inside, he was calculating. 13%. 2 or 3% every day if he watched closely. 2 weeks to 40. Maybe 10 days if he could find more sources. Who in town knows herbs? Old Henry the apothecary. Granny Morse from the outskirts who treats goats and sometimes people. Wandering healers who stop by the tavern once a season. Each of them is a page in a textbook. Every observation is a percentage. Before bed, Cade made his father tea again. The same recipe. Ginger, licorice, honey. His father drank it without resisting. He didn't brush it off today. He just took the mug and said thank you, calmly, as if it had always been that way. His mother watched from the kitchen. She said nothing. Cade lay down in bed. The golden window hung in the darkness. Everyday healing, 14%. Iron skin, 8%. Herbalism, 43%. 3 skills. The first day is over. The second will begin in 6 hours. Cade closed his eyes. The golden window flashed. A reminder. An A-rank skill bearer has been detected in Haven Gate. Identification impossible. Be careful. Cade opened his eyes. An A-rank user in Haven Gate, a border town. High-ranking adventurers used to stop by here. That's normal. The border is nearby. But the golden window hadn't warned about the 2 C ranks this morning. But it did warn him about this A rank. So this isn't an ordinary adventurer. So this is someone to stay away from. Cade rolled onto his side. His heart was beating a little faster. Tomorrow he'd be more careful. Tomorrow he'd be an F rank. The surveillance was even more conclusive than today. A guilty smile. Wet mugs. Nothing special. Just the innkeeper's son. The golden window went dark. Cade fell asleep. But he didn't fall asleep right away. Because Linnea's face was before his eyes. The shadows under her eyes. The laughter that broke at the edges. And the mother who was dying slowly, while the miller's daughter with the precision grind skill could do nothing. 13%. Every day counted. A week passed. Cade counted each day like a coin. 7 days of watching over his mother yielded 26% healing. Every morning he stood in the kitchen and helped her prepare decoctions. He chopped roots, he dried herbs, he handed her the mortar, and he watched. Everything. How she ground the leaves between her palms rather than in the mortar, because her palms transfer heat and the herb releases its juice differently. How she checked if the decoction was ready by its smell rather than its color. Because color deceives, but smell does not. How she placed her hand on the patient's temple and held it there for exactly 4 seconds. Not 3, not 5, 4. And each of these observations fell into the golden window like a seed into a furrow. Bit by bit, slowly, surely. His mother began to notice. Not the skill, not the golden window. She noticed that her son had changed. Before, Cade helped in the kitchen because he was asked to. Now, he came on his own. Before, he chopped vegetables while staring at the wall. Now he watched her hands, without looking away, with an expression she hadn't seen on his face before. Focused, hungry. One morning she turned around and caught his gaze. "What's up?" "Nothing, Mom. Just curious how you do it." She snorted. "Do what?" "The broth. 20 years, same thing." Cade shrugged. 20 years and yet it's slightly different every time. You added the mint later today. By half a second." His mother froze. She looked at him. Cade realized he'd said too much. An F-rank observation shouldn't notice a half-second difference in brewing the potion. Or maybe it should. It is the observation skill, after all, even if it is F-rank. Maybe that's exactly what he's doing. Observing. Useless, but accurate. Mother must have thought the same thing, because her face softened. "You're right. The water was hotter today. That's why it was later. If you drop mint into water that's too hot, it loses its oil." She said it mechanically, the way people say things they've known for 20 years. And she didn't notice how the golden window in Cade's eyes flickered. Everyday healing, 27%. Every explanation sped up the process. When a teacher teaches consciously, the student learns twice as fast. Mother didn't know she was a teacher, but she was one. Besides Mother, Cade found 3 more sources. Old apothecary Henry, the shop on the square, D-rank herb identification skill. Henry was a grumpy old man with hands that smelled of sage. Cade began visiting him for herbs for the tavern. His mother used to go. Now Cade volunteered himself. Henry grumbled but showed him how to tell a fresh root from an old one, how to dry mint so it doesn't lose its color, how to store chamomile in a clay pot instead of a sack. The golden window calculated. Herb identification. Study. 4%. 5. 7. Slower than healing. Because Henry taught him only occasionally, not every day. Second source. Granny Morse from the outskirts. E-rank soft hands skill. She treated goats, sometimes people. Cade came to her with a kid whose leg was cut, found by the roadside. He didn't find it, of course. He picked it up on purpose. Because he knew Granny Morse wouldn't turn away a sick animal. She took the kid. She placed it on the table and began to work. Her hands moved differently than his mother's, slower, softer. She didn't treat the wound. She soothed the tissue around it, so that the body would begin to heal itself. A different school, a different approach. The golden window. Soft hands. Study begun. 2%. 2% from E-rank. It'll go fast. E-rank takes hours. It'll be ready in a week. A third source, an unexpected one. Linnea. She came to the tavern every evening, sat down at her table, drank tea. Sometimes she laughed. More often than not, she didn't. Her mother was getting worse. Cade could tell by the way Linnea held her mug. With both hands, tightly. The way you hold on to something when everything else is slipping away. Once, Linnea told him that her mother had stopped getting out of bed in the mornings. That her father, the miller, didn't know what to do. That the healer, Winters, came every 3rd day, but just shook her head. Cade listened. He said nothing, but inside he was counting. 26, 27, 28. Too slow. He needed something else. Would give him a breakthrough. And on the 8th day he got it. A woman Cade had never seen before entered the tavern. Tall, thin, in a traveling cloak. She booked a room for 3 nights and dinner. She spoke little. She ate neatly, with her left hand. Cade handed her a plate and noticed it. on her wrist, round. From a burn, not a kitchen burn, an alchemical one, and traces of acid on her fingers. The woman wasn't just a traveler. She was an alchemist, or a healer of a different school. The golden window flashed brightly. Skill detected. Inner vision. Rank B. Type. Diagnostic healing. Cade nearly dropped the plate. Rank B healing. Diagnostic. Not curative, but diagnostic. The ability to see illness from within. To understand what was wrong. Exactly what his mother had lacked. Mom treated people but didn't always understand exactly what she was treating. This woman could see. Cade set the plate down. He returned behind the counter. His hands didn't tremble. His face didn't change. F-rank observation. Nothing special. Just a boy who serves food. But inside, everything was burning. 3 nights. He had 3 nights to observe this woman. A B-rank skill took weeks to master. 3 nights were nothing. But even 5% of inner vision would give him a grasp of the basics of diagnosis. And the basics were already more than nothing. Cade began working harder than usual. He changed the water in the woman's pitcher more often than necessary. He brought extra bread. He lingered at the table for an extra second. Every time he was nearby, the golden window flickered slightly. Inner vision, 1%. Not enough. He needed to see the skill in action. An opportunity presented itself on the second evening. A boy from the street, a blacksmith's son. He ran into the tavern with a cut on his hand, a deep cut from a knife. Cade's mother was upstairs. Cade was about to run after her when a woman in a cloak stood up from the table, calmly. She approached the boy, took his hand, looked, not at the wound, through it. Her eyes narrowed slightly. For a second, a pale glow appeared around her fingers. Not bright, barely noticeable. Diagnosis. She was looking inside. A golden window exploded with information. Inner vision. Activation confirmed. Method. Focus on the point of contact. Narrowing of perception. Penetration through the tactile channel. Analysis. 4%. From 1% to 4 in a single observation of active use. Cade stood with a cloth in his hands and watched. The woman turned to the boy. She said the cut was clean. No bone was broken. Rinse and bandage it. Cade's mother came down and did the rest. The woman returned to the table. Cade approached. He placed a mug of hot tea in front of her. She hadn't ordered it. He just brought it. With honey. Because he'd noticed she'd reached for the sugar bowl twice but hadn't taken any. So she wanted something sweet but wasn't allowing herself to have it. The woman looked at the mug, then at Cade. I didn't order it. Cade smiled. On the house. For helping with the boy. The woman was silent for a moment. She picked up the mug, took a sip. Something in her face shifted. Honey. You guessed right. Cade shrugged. He went back behind the bar. The golden window, inner vision, 5%. He didn't push himself on her, didn't ask questions, didn't ask to be taught. He just did his job and watched. On the third morning, the woman left. 5% of inner vision. A drop. But a drop that contained the principle. Now Cade knew how diagnostic healing worked. He didn't know how to apply it. 5% is too little to be practical. But he knew the direction. He knew what to look for. And he knew that sooner or later, another healer would walk into the tavern. A border town. They all passed through here. That evening, Cade went to see Linnea. Not to the tavern, to her home. The miller's house stood by the river. The mill was behind the house. The wheel turned slowly. Inside it smelled of flour and sickness. Linnea's mother was lying in bed, thin, pale. She smiled when she saw Cade. She always smiled, even when things were bad. Cade brought a jug of broth. He said her mother had asked him to bring it. It was true. Her mother really had asked him to bring it. She didn't know that Cade had added something of his own to the broth. Licorice root. Prepared differently. Not the way her mother did it, but the way Cade had seen Grandma M. Gentler, slower. Not to cure, but to soothe. To give the body a break. Not medicine, just broth from the neighbors. Linnea's mother drank it. She said it was delicious. She fell asleep half an hour later. Linnea stood by the door and watched her mother. She fell asleep faster today. Cade nodded. Linnea turned to him. Her eyes were red, not from tears, from lack of sleep. Cade, do you think she'll get better? Cade looked at Linnea's mother, at her face, at her hands above the blanket, at her breathing. The golden window was silent. 5% diagnostic data was too little to see anything, but Cade could see even without the window. 18 years of observation, skin tone, depth of breath, the way her fingers lay. He didn't know what was wrong with her, but he knew she hadn't given up yet. I'll bring broth every evening. Linnea looked at him for a long time, then she nodded. Thank you. Cade left. He walked down the dark street back to the tavern. He counted. 28% healing, 5% diagnosis, 8% iron skin, 43% herbalism, 7% herb identification, 2% soft hands. Skills. 10 days. None of them were ready, but they were all growing. Slowly, like roots underground, invisible but alive. A golden window flashed as he entered the tavern. Warning, an A-rank skill bearer is still in town. Location undetermined. Cade stopped. 10 days. An A-rank in town for 10 days. Adventurers didn't stay that long. Unless it wasn't an adventurer. He closed the door behind him, bolted it, and went to wash the mugs. He'd think about it tomorrow. Today he needed to sleep. Tomorrow he needed to study. Because Linnea's mother wouldn't wait until he reached 40%. On the 12th day, Cade figured out who the A-rank carrier was. It happened in the tavern. Evening. The room was full. Adventurers from the border, merchants, locals. Cade was carrying plates and mugs. He moved between the tables with ease, like water between stones, without bumping into anything, without drawing attention. And then he saw her. A girl was sitting in the corner by the window, alone, a mug of tea in front of her, untouched. Light hair tucked under a simple scarf, gray eyes. A novice's habit. Simple. Clean. Not poor, but not rich either. A young face. 20, maybe 21. But her eyes were older, much older. Cade had seen eyes like that on adventurers returning from the border. The eyes of people who know things they don't talk about. He approached her table to take her order, as usual. She looked up, and the golden window exploded. Skill detected, true sight, rank B, type, perception. Allows the user to see active skills and their ranks. Warning, the bearer of this skill can partially perceive your system. Do not use study in her presence. Cade didn't flinch. Not a single muscle in his face twitched. 18 years of practice. 18 years of guilty smiles and downcast eyes. The mask held fast. Good evening. Would you like anything else? The girl was looking at him. 1 second. 2. 3. Something in her gaze had changed, barely noticeable, as if she'd seen something and didn't understand what exactly. No, thank you. Cade nodded. He walked away. His hands didn't tremble. His back didn't sweat. He returned behind the counter and began washing mugs. Inside, everything clenched into a fist. True sight. B rank. She could see skills. She could see that he had F rank observation. That's normal. That's what the public system showed. But the golden window said to partially perceive your system. Partially. So she saw F rank. And something else. something that didn't fit into F rank, something that made her hold her gaze for 3 seconds longer than necessary. Cade washed the mugs and thought, who was she? A novice. In the Valtor Empire, novices served at the temples of the pantheon of the beginning. But the Haven Gate temple was small. One priestess, no novices. So she's a visitor. So she's on her way somewhere. Or looking for something. Or someone. The golden window flashed. Addendum. Probable affiliation. The hands of the beginning. Threat level, high. Cade set down his mug. The hands of the beginning. The inquisitors of the pantheon. Those who combed the border towns in search of distortions of the gift. Those about whom people whispered at the border. A girl with eyes older than her face. A novice who is not a novice. B-rank true sight. In a small border town where an F-rank boy treats his father's knee with tea that shouldn't work. Cade sighed, quietly, so no one would hear. The golden window had warned him 10 days ago. He hadn't understood. Now he did. She wasn't just passing through. She was here for him. Or for the rumors about him. And/or for rumors about something that brought her to Haven Gate, and he just happened to be nearby. In any case, he had to be more careful than ever. The girl came every evening. She sat at the same table. She ordered tea. She didn't drink it. She watched. The room. At the people. At Cade. Cade was working, washing mugs, carrying plates, smiling. He was an F rank, the most convincing F rank in the Valtor Empire. And not once, not a single time in all those days, had he activated study in her presence. It was difficult. The golden window flashed warnings. Do not use. Do not use. Do not use. And he didn't use it. But progress suffered because of it. Healing had stalled at 31%. Because his mother worked in the tavern, and the girl sat in the tavern. And watching her mother in her presence was dangerous. That left the mornings. When the girl went into town, Cade watched her mother in the kitchen. Eagerly. He absorbed every gesture, every movement, every whisper. 2 or 3 hours a day instead of 10. Progress slowed by half. And Linnea's mother wasn't waiting. Linnea came every evening. She sat down at the table across from the novice. She drank tea. The shadow under her eyes grew darker. Cade brought broth to the miller every evening after closing. The broth helped. Linnea's mother slept better. The pain receded. But the illness didn't go away. The broth was a band-aid, not a cure. The 14th day, Cade stood in the kitchen early in the morning. His mother hadn't come downstairs yet. His father was rumbling with barrels in the cellar. Cade was alone. He closed his eyes. He concentrated. For the first time, he tried to apply what he had learned. Not healing. No. 31%. Not enough for treatment. But 5% of inner vision. Diagnosis. The woman in the cloak had shown him how. Concentration on the point of contact. Narrowing of perception. Penetration through the tactile channel. 5%. That wouldn't be enough to see inside a person. But maybe it's enough to see inside a glass. Cade placed his hand on the pitcher of herbal tea his mother had prepared yesterday. He closed his eyes. He concentrated. Nothing. Darkness. Silence. Then, just a little, at the very edge of perception, something warm, something alive, like light behind closed eyelids. Mint. He could sense the mint, not with his nose, not with his taste, something else. Something that the 5% of inner vision had granted him at the very edge of what was possible. The mint was good, fresh, but next to it, licorice. It was tired, old, having lost its strength. His mother hadn't noticed. 20 years of the same deliveries, the same sack, the same merchant. But this fall the merchant brought roots from a different field. Drier, weaker. Mother didn't sense the difference. Cade did. He opened his eyes. The golden window. Inner vision. 6%. A small victory. A huge one. Because now he knew what he could do. Not much. Not far. But he could. Cade left the kitchen. He went to Henry the apothecary. He bought fresh licorice root. Henry looked at him suspiciously. "What do you need it for?" "Mother asked for it." "Well, if Mother asked for it." Cade returned. He replaced the root in the decoction. That evening, Mother drank her own decoction and froze. She looked into the mug, then at the shelf of herbs, then at the mug again. "It tastes different," she said. Not to Cade, to herself, as if she were talking to her own hands. Something had changed. For the better. She didn't understand what, but she felt it. 20 years of practice. Her intuition was sharper than she thought. She had simply grown accustomed to trusting habit rather than her intuition. Cade was silent. The decoction was working better now. Not because of his skill, because of the fresh root. It was explainable. Logical. Safe. Her mother could think the root had simply turned out to be better. That happens. On the 15th day, Cade arrived at the miller's house earlier than usual. Linnea opened the door. She looked terrible. A sleepless night. Mom had a bad night. Cade stepped inside. He set down the broth. He walked over to the bed. Linnea's mother was asleep. Her breathing was uneven. Cade reached out. He touched her wrist, checking her pulse. That's how anyone would explain it, but in reality, he closed his eyes and tapped into the 5% of inner vision he possessed. Darkness, silence. And then, on the edge of perception, something cold, inside, deep down. He couldn't see what it was. 6% diagnostic ability wouldn't allow it. But he sensed the direction, the abdomen, something in the abdomen. Not a wound, not an infection. Something that was growing, slowly, quietly, like grass through stone. Cade withdrew his hand. He opened his eyes. Linnea was standing nearby. "What?" "Nothing. Pulse steady. That's good." Linnea nodded. Cade left. He walked down the dark street and thought, something is growing inside her. To treat it, you need to know exactly what it is. For a diagnosis, you need more than 5%. 50% requires weeks of observation by a healer, a diagnostician. There isn't one in town, and there won't be until spring when the trade routes open. Winter. 4 months until spring. Linnea's mother doesn't have 4 months. Cade stopped in the middle of the street. He looked up. The sky was black and heavy. Snow was gathering. The first of the year. A golden window flashed. Recommendation. Combine available skills. Healing 31% plus inner vision 6% plus herbalism 45% plus gentle hands 12%. Total effectiveness of the combination when applied purposefully. Calculation. Enough to stabilize. Not enough to cure. Stabilization. Not a cure. But time. If he can stabilize the illness, stop its progression, not cure it, but prevent it from getting worse, then Linnea's mother will live to see spring. And by spring, Cade will be at 40%, maybe 50%. Maybe another healer will come to town and Cade will gain another portion of knowledge. Maybe. Cade returned. He went back to the mill. Linnea was surprised when she opened the door. "But you left." "I forgot something." He went into the kitchen. He started cooking. Not broth, something new. Fresh licorice, ginger, mint prepared using his mother's method, honey, and the root he'd found at Granny Moore's. She called it sleep root. It calmed the goats and made them sleep soundly. It helped people too. It had to help. The golden window calculated. A combination of skills, healing, herbalism, gentle hands, synergy. 23% of the minimum required. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But Targeted application. Cade knew who he was brewing for, knew what hurt, knew where, knew how she breathed in her sleep, knew she liked warmth, knew she smiled even when she felt bad. He wasn't brewing just any decoction. He was brewing a decoction for Linnea's mother, who had something cold growing inside her, who smiled when it hurt, and who had smelled of flour and fresh bread her whole life. The golden window flashed. A targeted combination with a personal connection. Recalculation. Efficiency. 39% of the minimum required. A 16% increase due to the personal intent factor. Cade froze. 16%. Because he was doing this for a specific person. The skill worked through love, not through force, through caring for a specific person. The golden window knew this. Maybe it knew from the very beginning. Cade strained the brew, poured it into a mug, brought it to the bed. Linnea stood nearby. "What is it?" "Tea, herbal. I saw the recipe from a traveler in a tavern. For sleep." Linnea looked at him doubtfully, but her mother had already woken up. She reached for the mug. She drank it, slowly, sip by sip. "It's good. Cade made it." Cade smiled. Linnea's mother fell asleep 10 minutes later. Her breathing became more even, just slightly, barely noticeable. But Cade noticed, and Linnea noticed. "She's breathing better." Cade nodded. "I'll bring it every night." Linnea looked at him. Her eyes were shining, not from laughter. "Why are you doing this?" Cade shrugged. "The tavern always needs an extra pair of hands." She didn't laugh. She just stood there and looked at him. And for the first time, Cade noticed that the freckles on her nose formed a pattern resembling a constellation. He hadn't noticed it before. 18 years, and he hadn't noticed. Strange. He left, quickly, because he realized he'd been standing there too long. Because Linnea was looking at him in a way she hadn't before. And because the golden window had written a line that made his ears burn. The study skill does not apply to studying one's own emotions. Recommendation: figure it out for yourself. Cade walked down the street and, for the first time in 2 weeks, wasn't calculating percentages. The snow began on the 16th day. Quiet. Heavy. It blanketed the roofs of Haven Gate, and the streets turned white overnight. Cade woke up from the cold. The blanket had slipped off. Outside the window, a white sky and white ground. A golden window hung in the darkness beneath the ceiling. Everyday healing, 34%. Inner vision, 8%. Iron skin, 14%. Herbalism, 47%. Herb identification, 12%. Gentle hands, 18%. 6 skills, all growing. Slower than he'd like, but growing. Cade got up. He got dressed. He went downstairs. His father was already working, without a cane. The 3rd week without a cane. His mother was making breakfast. Her movements were familiar, quick. Cade stood beside her and began slicing bread. His mother glanced at him. "You're early." "Couldn't sleep." His mother grunted. She continued working. Cade watched her hands out of the corner of his eye. The golden window flickered quietly. 35%. 5% to go until 40. A few days. Maybe a week. If the spy novice didn't stay in the hall too long. The morning hours were golden. The girl with true sight would leave the tavern after breakfast and return for dinner. 6 hours of freedom. 6 hours when Cade could observe openly, could soak it all in, could learn. Today, he decided to try something new. His father was working in the hall, rearranging tables, cleaning the fireplace, moving with ease. His knee no longer hurt. But the iron skin skill still activated reflexively. Every time his father lifted something heavy, Cade saw it. A barely noticeable hardening of the skin on his hands and back, a fraction of a second. His father didn't notice it himself. Golden window. Iron skin, 15%, D rank. It should be simple. Hours. But Cade taught him in bits and pieces. A minute here, a second there. Progress came in fits and starts. Today, Cade found a way to speed things up. Dad, let me help with the fireplace. The fireplace in the tavern was old and heavy. Cast iron grate, stone masonry. Every fall, his father took it apart and cleaned it. Hard work. It's easier together. Father nodded. They worked side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Cade lifted the grate along with his father. He felt his father's hands tense. How, for a split second, the skin became slightly thicker. A touch. Contact. The golden window. 16%. 17. An hour's work. 20%. Direct contact during activation. The best way to learn. They finished by lunchtime. His father slapped Cade on the back. Good work, son. Cade smiled, rubbed his back. His father slapped hard, even without practice. The first guests arrived at lunchtime. Locals. Miller Hale without Linnea. He sat down at the table, ordered soup and beer. His face looked tired. Cade handed him a plate and sat across from him, for a moment. How's Miss Hale? The miller looked at him. Tough. Yesterday was bad. Today's better. Your broth helps, kid. I don't know what you put in it, but she sleeps more soundly. Cade nodded. Just herbs, nothing special. The miller smiled wryly, bitterly. Nothing special. Healer Winters has been coming to us for 6 months and can't do anything. But you bring some broth and my wife sleeps peacefully. Nothing special. Cade said nothing. The miller was telling the truth, and that truth made him uncomfortable. His mother had been going to Miss Hale ale and couldn't help. Cade came with the broth and helped. Not because he was better, because he had 4 skills instead of 1, and because he knew who he was cooking for. But he couldn't explain that. The miller finished his soup. He left. Cade cleared the plate. He looked at his mother through the kitchen window. She had her back to him. She was cutting vegetables. She didn't turn around. But Cade could see her shoulders. They were tense. She had heard the conversation. She heard the miller say that her son's broth helped better than her healing. That wasn't true. The broth wasn't better. The broth was different. The broth did what his mother's healing couldn't. It stabilized rather than cured. It supplemented rather than replaced. But the miller didn't know the difference, and his mother didn't know either. And that made it hard for Cade, because his mother might think that her F-rank son was doing her job better than she was. And that wasn't true. Not at all. That evening, Cade approached his mother in the kitchen. She was washing a pot, silently. Mom. What? Miss Hale got better because you stabilized her condition for 6 months. Without you, my broth wouldn't have done anything. His mother stopped. She turned around. She looked at him. You heard what Hale said? Yes. His mother was silent. She wiped her hands. She sat down on the bench by the wall. Cade sat down next to her. You don't have to comfort me. I'm not comforting you. I'm telling the truth. Healing doesn't work like a tree. It works like a foundation. You laid the foundation. I just put up a wall. Mother looked at him, for a long time, with that same expression that had appeared on the day of the altar, as if she were seeing him for the first time. Where did you learn that, Cade? Because healing works like a foundation. They don't teach that in school. I learned that myself over 10 years. And you're 18, and you say it as if you've always known. Cade felt thin ice beneath his feet. Every word of his that was too clever was a crack. Every observation that was too precise was a step toward the edge. Fran, observation doesn't need to know how healing works. Observation, Mom, my skill. I observe. I see what you're doing. I see the result. I put 1 and 1 together. Mother snorted. Frank observation. The most useless skill on the list, which is why somehow knows things that B ranks don't. She shook her head. Cade, I'm your mother. I know when you're lying. A pause. A heavy one. Cade was silent. Mother was silent. The fireplace crackled. I'm not asking you to tell me. His mother stood up. She went back to the cauldron. But if you ever want to, I'm here. Cade nodded. His throat tightened. He wanted to tell her. Right now. To sit down next to her and show her the golden window. Show her the percentages. Show her that he isn't a useless Frank. That he could do more. That he was already doing more. But the golden window burned in the corner of his vision. Quietly. Warningly. A suggestion. Not now. Not here. A novice with true sight was in the building. Cade clenched his teeth. She had returned earlier than usual, sitting in the hall, drinking her tea, watching. Even here in the kitchen with his mother, Cade wasn't safe. He left the kitchen, grabbed a tray, went to work. The novice sat by the window, gray eyes, untouched tea. Cade approached, brought a fresh mug, hot. This one had gone cold. She looked at him, raised the mug, took a sip. You're observant, for an F rank. Cade smiled. Observation, the only thing I know how to do. She tilted her head slightly, studied him, openly, without hiding it. My name is Isabel. Cross. I'm on my way to the Cross Fallow Temple, stopping for a couple of days. A lie. Smooth. Professional. Cross Fallow is a day's journey away. A couple of days is too long to stop. And she'd been sitting there for over 2 weeks already. Cade nodded. Welcome to Haven Gate. I hope you're enjoying your stay. She didn't answer. She just looked. Cade walked away. For the rest of the evening, he worked without turning toward her table. But he felt her gaze. Constant. Intent. Like a beam of light through a crack in the door. The golden window was silent. It gave no warning. It didn't calculate interest. It was just quiet, as if it, too, were lying in wait. Before closing, Cade was tidying up the dining room. Isabel stood up. She walked toward the stairs leading upstairs. She stopped. She turned around. The soup was good today. Thank you. She left. Cade stood there with a rag. Soup. Ordinary soup. Beef, potatoes, carrots, nothing special. He hadn't added anything to her soup. He hadn't healed it. He hadn't improved it. He hadn't used his skills. Just soup. But she said thank you. And her voice was different. Not the voice of a spy. Not the voice of an inquisitor. The voice of a girl who was 21 and eating soup in a strange city far from home. Cade cleaned up the dining room, closed the tavern, went up to his room, lay down. The golden window opened in the darkness. Everyday healing, 36%. 4% to the threshold. Cade was counting the days. 2, maybe 3. Then he'd be able to start truly healing Linnea's mother. Not just stabilizing her, healing her. Or at least trying. But Isabel. Her true sight. If Cade started to truly heal, if Linnea's mother's illness begins to recede, it will be noticeable. Healer Winters cannot cure it, and yet the illness suddenly goes away. Someone is healing her. Who? In a small town where everyone knows each other, where a novice with eyes older than her face sits by the window every evening and watches. Cade closed his eyes. He had to decide. Heal and take the risk. Or wait and waste time. Linnea's mother or safety. The golden window flickered. Recommendation, none. It's your decision. Cade lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling. Snow was falling outside the window. Quiet. Heavy. The first winter of his new life. The longest night. He'll decide in the morning. The golden window flashed again. Additional information. Novice Isabel Cross was crying in her room today. Duration, 111 minutes. Reason unknown. Cade opened his eyes. She was crying. 11 minutes. In the room above his head. He hadn't heard her. The walls were thick. But the golden window had heard, or known, or sensed. A spy, an inquisitor, an enemy, who cries alone in a strange city on a winter night. Cade rolled onto his side. In the morning, he knew what he would do. In the morning, when Isabel came down for breakfast, Cade would set a bowl in front of her. Not just soup, a different soup. A soup she hadn't ordered. He didn't know exactly which one yet, but he knew her accent. Southern, from Winmer or the surrounding area. He knew she was left-handed, that she didn't like her food too hot, that she took bread before the soup, not after. He would piece it all together, every detail, every observation, and he would cook the soup she ate as a child, or something close to it. Because 21 years old and alone in a strange city, crying for 11 minutes. Because spy or not, a person still misses home. And because Cade Winters didn't make soup. He made soup for a specific person. It was his weapon, his shield, his only advantage, and he was going to use it. The golden window went dark. Cade fell asleep. Snow fell outside the window all night. The morning of the 18th day began with a smell. Cade got up before dawn and went down to the kitchen. He took out of the pantry what he had gathered the night before. A white turnip, celery, a piece of salted pork, clarified butter, and a small bunch of thyme he'd begged from Granny Morse. Winmer soup. He didn't know the recipe. No one in Havengate did. Winmer was a southern city 3 weeks' journey away. But Cade knew something else. He knew that Isabel ate bread before her soup. A southern custom. In the northern provinces, they dipped bread into the soup. In the south, they ate it separately. He knew she didn't like it hot. Southerners were used to it warm. Not to the scorching kind. He knew her accent, soft consonants, swallowed endings, Windmer or cradle. 2 cities on the southern coast. He knew she was left-handed and held her spoon closer to the middle rather than the edge. That's how children are taught in families where the table is cramped. A modest family. A simple one. And he knew one thing that wasn't revealed by observation but by the golden window. She had been crying. For 11 minutes. At night. Alone. Cade had been cooking the soup for 2 hours. He took his time. He sliced the turnip thinly. That's how they did it in the South. Northerners chopped it coarsely. Southerners sliced it finely. He didn't throw in the salted meat whole but cut into strips. He added the thyme at the very end. A minute before it was done, so the aroma would be fresh, not overcooked. He spooned clarified butter onto the surface, a southern habit. The golden window was silent. It didn't calculate percentages. It didn't offer advice. It just hung in the corner of his vision with a quiet, warm light. When the soup was ready, Cade tasted it. Not perfect. He didn't know the real recipe. But close. Close enough for a person far from home to feel something familiar. Isabel came down for breakfast at 7, as always. She sat at her table by the window, as always. Cade approached. He set a bowl in front of her. She looked down. Then she looked up. "I didn't order this." Cade shrugged. "Trying out a new recipe. Need your opinion." She looked at the soup, at the thinly sliced turnip, at the oil on the surface, at the thyme. Something in her face flinched, quickly, for half a second. Then the mask returned, calm, even, professional. She picked up a spoon, tasted it, chewed slowly. Cade stood nearby, waiting. For this. She fell silent. "How do you know this recipe?" "What recipe?" "Turnip, thyme, oil on top. That's how it's made." She didn't finish. Cade saw her fingers tighten around the spoon a little tighter. "I saw it in a book in the kitchen. Mom has an old cookbook with recipes from different provinces. Southern soup. I think from Winmer. A lie. Smooth, simple. Her mother really did have a cookbook. It were no Winmer recipes in it. But Isabel didn't know that. She stared at the soup for a long time. Then she started eating, silently, spoonful by spoonful, without looking up. Cade went behind the counter. He worked. He didn't turn around. 10 minutes later, Isabel finished eating. She stood up, walked over to the counter, set down her plate. It was delicious. Her voice was steady. Her face was calm. But her eyes, the edges of her eyes were red, just a tiny bit, so slight that no one would have noticed. Cade noticed. She left the tavern. Cade cleared the plate. The golden window flashed. Skill, study, new branch available, social influence, study through empathy, percentage not fixed. Cade read it twice. Social influence, not combat related, not a craft, studying people by caring for them. The golden window offered him the chance to learn to understand people even more deeply. Not as a skill, as a continuation of what he'd been doing his whole life. He closed the window. Not now. Right now, he had other things to do. Until lunchtime, Cade worked in the kitchen with his mother. Everyday healing, 37%. His mother taught him without knowing she was teaching. She showed him how to make a compress for joints, how to determine a patient's temperature by the color of the skin behind their ears, how to brew comfrey root so it wouldn't taste bitter. Every word she spoke fell into the golden window, percent by percent. After lunch, Cade went to see Grandma Morse. She was treating a goat with a swollen belly. Cade stood nearby and watched. Gentle hands, 21%. The old woman worked in silence. She didn't explain, but her hands spoke for her. Slow, circular, counterclockwise, always counterclockwise. She soothed the flesh. She didn't heal. She let the body know there was no need to fight, that it could relax, that someone was there, helping. The golden window captured every movement, 22%, 23%. By evening, Cade returned to the tavern. Isabel was already sitting by the window. Cade brought her tea, hot but not scalding. She took the mug, looked at him. "Do you bring tea to all the guests that they didn't order? Only to those who are freezing by the window?" She snorted. "I'm not freezing." Cade looked at her hands, her fingers on the mug, white from the cold, knuckles red. "Of course you're not freezing." He walked away. Behind him, he heard a soft sound, almost a laugh. Almost. Linnea arrived later than usual. Her eyes were dry, her face was calm, but Cade could tell by the way she sat down. It was heavy, like someone who'd been carrying something all day and finally put it down. Like Mom. Just like that. She hadn't slept all night. She was coughing. Cade nodded. He brought tea, sat down next to her for a minute. 37% healing. 3 to go. 2 days. Maybe 3. He didn't say that. He said something else. "I'll bring the broth later today. I'll add something new." Linnea looked at him, tiredly. "Cade, you don't have to do this every night. You have your own life." Cade shook his head. "Linnea, I like cooking. Let me do this." She blinked, opened her mouth, closed it, then smiled. For the first time in a week. "Fine, F rank. Cook it." That evening, Cade made the broth. He added comfrey root, prepared using his mother's method, but with the gentleness of Granny Morse. 2 styles of healing in 1 pot. The golden window calculated. Combination with a personal connection. Stabilization effectiveness, 44%, a 5% increase since last time. Cade carried the broth to the mill. The snow crunched underfoot. It was dark and cold. Linnea opened the door. She took the jug. Their fingers touched. Her hand was icy. Cade squeezed her fingers for a second, mechanically, because she was freezing and he knew it. Linnea froze. She looked at his hand, at his face. Cade pulled his hand away. Quickly. The broth is still hot. He left, with quick steps, down the dark street. Her heart was pounding, not from the cold. The golden window was silent. Probably even it knew it was better not to comment right now. At night, Cade lay awake and counted. 37%. Tomorrow, 38. The day after tomorrow, 39. In 3 days, 40. The threshold. Then he could begin the real treatment. But for that, he needed a plan. You can't just show up and cure it. You can't make the illness disappear overnight. Isabel would notice. His mother would notice. The whole town would notice. It has to be slow. It has to look natural. The broth helps. Gradually, the body fights back. Linnea's mother is recovering. No miracle. Just good broth and a strong woman. Cade closed his eyes. The plan was taking shape. Slow, cautious, like everything he did. The golden window flashed before he fell asleep. Information. Novice Isabel Cross sent a letter this morning. Recipient unknown. Content unknown. Cade opened his eyes. A letter. She wrote a letter. To whom? To the authorities. To the hands of the beginning. A report. About what? About him. About the rumors. About the city. About what she saw and didn't understand. Or home. To her mother. To a friend. Who do 21-year-old girls write to in winter from a strange city? Cade didn't know. And that bothered him. The 40th percentile arrived on the 21st day. Quietly. Without fanfare. Cade stood in the kitchen and watched as his bandaged the blacksmith Brenna's hand, which he'd cut on a plowshare. His mother washed the wound, applied ointment, wrapped it in a clean cloth. As usual, quickly. The golden window flashed. Everyday healing, 40%. The threshold has been reached. Basic treatment for chronic illnesses is available. Cade didn't move, didn't smile, didn't breathe out. He just stood there watching his mother tie a knot in the bandage. A double knot, just as her grandmother had taught her. He knew that knot. Now he knew it for real. Not by watching, but with his own hands. He could have tied it himself, with his eyes closed. 40%, 3 weeks, a drop every day. Mom's hands, grandma's goats, Henry's herbs, a passing healer with inner vision. It all added up to a number that meant he could start. But he had to start the right way. Cade waited until evening. He made the broth, the same one he'd been drinking every day. But today, he added something else. Not a new herb, a new intention. Before, he had stabilized, stopped the growth, kept it from getting worse. Now, he reached deeper. He closed his eyes over the pot. He pictured Linnea's mother, her face, her hands on the blanket, her smile that didn't fade even when it hurt. And he imagined that coldness he felt inside her, in her stomach, dark, growing. He didn't know what it was. 8% diagnostics offered no answer, but 40% healing offered something else. He felt where to direct the warmth, not at random, precisely, just as his mother had directed her hands toward the blacksmith's wound. Only Cade directed not his hands but the broth. Every ingredient in its place. Licorice for warmth, ginger for movement, mint for calm, comfrey for softness, and honey, because Linnea's mother loved sweets, just like her father. The golden window opened, a combination of skills. Healing, 40%. Herbalism, 48%. Gentle hands, 23%. Inner vision, 8%. Targeted application with a personal connection. Effectiveness calculation. 51% of what's needed for partial healing. 51. More than half. Not enough to cure, but enough to make a difference. For the illness to start receding. Slowly. Millimeter by millimeter, but receding. Cade strained the broth, poured it into a jug, carried it down the dark, snow-covered street to the mill. Linnea opened the door. She had been waiting. She waited every evening. Here. She took the pitcher. Warm. Steam rose from the spout. Linnea looked at him. Something new today, just slightly different proportions. Linnea nodded. She carried the pitcher to her mother. Cade stood in the doorway. Linnea's mother propped herself up on the pillows. She drank the broth, slowly, sip by sip. Delicious. Cade, thank you. Cade nodded. He left. He walked down the street and did the math. If the broth works 51% of the time, the visible effect will appear in 3 or 4 days. Gradually, imperceptibly. A little more energy in the morning. A little less coughing at night. Skin a little rosier. No miracles, no sudden leaps. Just a body that's starting to win. 4 days passed. On the 25th day, Linnea came into the tavern and laughed. Not a thin laugh that broke at the edges, a real one. Loud. Her red braids swayed, her freckles danced. Mom got up today, all by herself. She made it to the window, said she wanted some bread. Cade stood behind the counter and listened, smiling. Linnea spoke quickly, choking on her words. Dad almost dropped the sack of flour. He's standing there staring at her like an idiot. And she's standing by the window saying the snow is beautiful. You know, the is beautiful. She hasn't mentioned snow in 3 months. Cade nodded. Good. That's very good. Linnea, don't rush her. Let her get up when she wants. Let her go to bed when she's tired. I'll bring the broth as usual. Linnea fell silent. She looked at him. Seriously, it's your broth. Yes, Linnea, it's your broth that's healing her. Cade shook his head. The broth helps. Her own body is healing her. She's a strong woman. Linnea looked at him for a long time. Then she leaned across the table and kissed him on the cheek. Quickly, lightly, like the wind. And she ran out of the tavern before Cade could blink. He stood behind the bar. His cheek was burning. The golden window flashed. The study skill doesn't apply to analyzing kisses. Recommendation: figure it out yourself. Cade grabbed a rag and began wiping the counter with such zeal it was as if he wanted to scrub the wood to a hole. A soft sound came from the corner of the room. Cade turned. Isabel was sitting by the window. She was looking at him, at his red cheek, at the rag with which he was scrubbing the counter with the fury of a berserker. There was something in her expression, not a smirk, not suspicion, something softer. She lowered her eyes to her mug. Cade turned away. Something unexpected happened that evening. A girl Cade had never seen before walked into the tavern, petite, skinny, wearing a leather apron over a traveling cloak. Her left cheek was scarred, an old scar, long-standing. Black hair, short, dark eyes. She stared at the floor. She entered quietly, like someone accustomed to not taking up space. She approached the bar. Cade. Good evening. How can I help you? The girl didn't look up. I need a room. Here. She fell silent. How long will 5 copper coins last? 5 copper coins. In Havengate, a room cost 3 copper coins a night. 1.5 nights. Cade looked at her sunburned cheek, at her hands, calloused fingers. Not from working in the fields, from a tool, a hammer, or pliers, a blacksmith, or an apprentice. Traces of metal dust on her fingernails. The golden window flashed. Skill detected. Metal reading. Rank C. Type: artisan. Allows one to sense the structure of metal by touch. Determine composition. Find defects. C rank. Artisan. A serious skill. Blacksmiths with metal reading worked at court, in the capital's finest workshops. What was this girl doing in Havengate with 5 copper coins and a scar on her face? 2 nights. Cade said it flatly. 5 copper coins for 2 nights, breakfast included. The girl looked up, for the first time. Dark eyes, wary, like a beast accustomed to the possibility of a blow. 2 nights. That's more than 5 copper coins. Cade shrugged. Winter. Few guests. Discount. He held out the key. Room 3. Upstairs. Second door on the left. The girl took the key. Her fingers were trembling. From the cold or from something else? Thank you. Her voice was quiet, like a whisper. She turned and walked toward the stairs. She stopped. My name is Isla. Song. Cade nodded. Cade Winters. Welcome to the Iron Knee. She went upstairs. Cade stood behind the bar and watched the stairs. The golden window glowed quietly. Metal. Reading. C rank. Study not yet begun. Application observation required. C rank required weeks. But the girl was here, in his tavern. And judging by the 5 copper coins, she had nowhere to go. Cade reheated the leftovers from dinner, carried them upstairs, knocked on the door of room 3. Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened slightly, dark eyes, wary. Dinner. On the house. Winter promotion. Isla looked at the plate, at the bread, at the soup, at Cade. There is no winter promotion. No, but you're hungry and the soup is hot. She stood in the doorway. A second. 2. She reached out and took the plate. Thank you. The door closed. Cade went downstairs. The golden window. Social impact. Learning through empathy. Activation recorded. Cade smirked. Even the golden window considered kindness a skill. Isla Song spent 3 days in the tavern before she spoke. The first 2 days, she came down for breakfast, sat in a corner, ate quickly, eyes downcast. She would go into town. She would return in the evening, quiet, small, invisible. Cade didn't pry. He didn't ask. He just served her food, hot, on time. On the 3rd day, she didn't leave after breakfast. She stayed seated at the table. Cade was cleaning the dining room. She watched his hands, the way he wiped the table. Then she spoke. Do you know where I can find work? At the blacksmith's. Cade paused. He thought. Blacksmith Bren was the only blacksmith in Haven Gate. Old. Grumpy. He hadn't taken on any apprentices since the last one ran away last spring. Bren, in the square, but he doesn't take apprentices. Isla nodded, quietly, like someone who'd heard this 10 times in 10 towns. Thank you. She stood up. Cade watched her. Her scorched cheek, her hands, the way she held her back. Straight. Too straight. The way you hold yourself when you're used to being hit and don't want to show it hurts. He said something he hadn't planned to say. Show him what you can do. Don't talk. Show him. She stopped, turned around. What? Bren doesn't believe words. He's a blacksmith. He believes in metal. If you come and show him that you can sense metal, he'll forget about the recommendations. Ayla looked at him. For a long time. How do you know I can sense metal? Cade nearly choked on the air. An F-rank observer isn't supposed to know others' skills. Not at first glance. Not without a public announcement. A mask, quickly. He looked at her hands. Pointedly. You have calluses from the hammer, metal dust under your nails, and you asked about a blacksmith shop, not just any job. So, a blacksmith. And a C-rank blacksmith has either metal reading or palm heat. You have a burn on your face, so you worked at the forge. So, metal reading. Palm heat doesn't burn the user. He spoke confidently, logically, as if he'd simply pieced the facts together. An F-rank observation, useless but accurate. Isla stood and listened. Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted, just a tiny bit. You're strange, Cade shrugged. I know. She left. She came back 3 hours later, dirty, covered in soot, but there was something new on her face. He took me on. For a week. A trial period. Cade nodded. He set the soup in front of her, hot. She sat down, started eating, silently. Then she looked up. I showed him a crack in the plowshare he hadn't seen. He cursed for 10 minutes. Then he gave me an apron. Cade smiled. Metal reading, a valuable skill. Isla lowered her eyes. My former master didn't think so. She said it quietly, matter-of-factly, like talking about the weather. But Cade heard. Former master. Ran away. A scar on her cheek. Hands that trembled when she picked up a wrench. He didn't ask. Just poured her some more soup. She ate and, for the first time in 3 days, didn't stare at the floor. A week later, Bren left Isla. Not on a trial basis. For good. She sensed the cracks the old blacksmith missed. She saw flaws in the blanks that others only found after tempering. Bren grumbled but was pleased. Cade could tell by the way the old man started drinking less in the evenings. When work is going well, there's no need to drink. Isla began lingering in the tavern in the evenings. Not in her room, in the hall. She sat by the fireplace, sharpening her knife. An old one. The handle wrapped in leather, the blade thin. Sharpened to a point that spoke of mastery. Cade sat down one evening. A good knife. Isla didn't look up. A bad knife. The balance is off. The steel is soft. The handle doesn't fit your hand. Then why are you sharpening it? Because there isn't another one. Cade looked at her hands, at the knife, at the way her fingers rested on the handle. The handle was thick. For a large palm. A man's. A master. A former master. The master's knife that she took when she ran away, or that he threw after her. Cade remembered the size of her palm. Small, narrow, long fingers, left-handed. She sharpened with her right, but held the knife in her left. And he noticed one more thing. When Isla picked up a blank in the forge, when she touched the metal, for a split second, her face changed. The tension faded. The scar ceased to exist. She listened to the metal, and the metal spoke to her. The golden window. Reading metal. The study had begun. 3%. 3%. After a week of observation. C rank was slow, just as it should be. But Cade wasn't in a hurry. Isla was here, in his tavern, every day. He had months. One morning, Cade came to Bren with a request. Teach me the basics. I need to fix hinges at the tavern. Locks. Little things. Bren looked down at him. He was huge. Arms like logs. F rank. Blacksmithing. Are you serious? I'm not asking to make swords. Hinges. Locks. Simple things. Bren snorted. But he showed him. How to hold the hammer. How to heat the workpiece. How to strike. Steadily. At a single point. Cade learned. Slowly. Clumsily. Just as an F rank. But every blow landed in the golden window. Blacksmithing. E rank. Study begun. 4%. Not from Bren. Bren had no skill. He was an ordinary blacksmith. Good, but ordinary. The percentage came from technique, from understanding how metal behaves under the hammer. It was basic knowledge that the system considered a separate skill, and Isla was working nearby, silently, intently. And every time she touched the workpiece and her face changed, Cade watched. And the golden window counted. 4%. Metal reading. 5. 6. Slowly, but surely. One evening, Cade lingered in the workshop. Bren had left. Isla had stayed behind too. She was working on something of her own, something small. Cade could see it out of the corner of his eye. A ring. Simple. Iron. She forged it in 2 hours, slipped it onto her finger. She looked at it, took it off, placed it on the anvil, and struck it with a hammer, flattened it, started over. Cade approached. Why? Ayla didn't turn around. The shank doesn't fit my hand. Not the shank, the shape. The ring is too wide. For my finger, it needs to be a quarter smaller. But at that size, there isn't enough metal for strength, and I can't decide. She said it calmly, like a problem, a technical one. But Cade heard something else. She couldn't make the perfect thing for herself. She could for someone else. Metal. Reading allowed her to sense the structure, to find the perfect shape for any piece. For any. Except her own. Because for herself, she didn't believe she deserved perfection. Cade didn't say that out loud. He said something else. Try an alloy. Add a little copper to the iron. Copper is softer. It'll give it flexibility. You can make it thinner without losing strength. Ayla turned. She looked at him. How do you know about alloys? At the tavern, an adventurer was telling stories. A lie. The truth was that 48% herbalism had given him a side knowledge of mixing substances, not metals directly, but the principle is the same. Mix 2 weak ones to get a strong one. Ayla was silent. Then she turned to the forge. She took the copper, she took the iron, and began to work. Cade sat in the corner and watched. The golden window glowed quietly. Metal reading, 7%. She worked for an hour. The ring came out thin, strong. Ayla slipped it onto her finger. She looked at it, didn't take it off. Perfect. She said it as if she didn't believe it. Cade nodded. He stood up. He walked to the door. Strange. She said it to his back. Cade turned around. I know. She didn't smile, but the scar on her cheek smoothed out a little, as if her face had remembered that it could be soft. A month. 30 days since the altar. Cade stood in the kitchen and counted. Domestic healing, 46%. Inner vision, 12%. Iron skin, 27%. Herbalism, 54%. Herb identification, 19%. Soft hands, 28%. Metal reading, 9%. Blacksmithing, 11%. 8 skills, all are growing. Mother Linnea got out of bed a week ago and has been getting up every day since. She walked around the house. She cooked simple meals. She smiled. The illness hadn't gone away. Cade sensed this with 12% of his vision. The cold spot inside had shrunk but hadn't disappeared. The broth held it back, pressed down on it, but didn't defeat it. Victory required more. 46% wasn't enough. 60 was needed. Maybe 70. Cade didn't know for sure because he'd never treated anything like this before. The golden window gave vague estimates. The odds of a full recovery at the current level. 31%. Not enough. 31%. A coin that lands on tails more often than heads. Cade wasn't going to take the risk. Not with her. Not with Linnea's mother. He would wait, learn, raise the odds, and bring the broth every evening until he was sure. Meanwhile, Haven Gate was changing, slowly, imperceptibly, like a house changes when someone quietly repairs it at night. Martha, the widow next door, for whom Cade had made an arthritis poultice in the 2nd week, now walked straighter. She said that winter was milder this year, that her joints didn't ache, that she must be praying correctly. Cade didn't argue. Old Henry, the pharmacist, noticed that people were buying more herbs from him, not just Cade. Cade's mother, too. Because Cade had quietly replaced 3 ingredients in her recipes with fresher ones, and she decided it was her idea. His mother's decoctions started working better. Patients noticed. They came more often. His mother didn't understand what had changed, but was pleased. Cade knew what had changed. 54% herbalism. He knew which roots were fresh, which herbs were stronger. which honey was best for which decoction, and he placed the right ones on the pantry shelves so his mother would take them without thinking. Blacksmith Bren grumbled less. Ayla was doing well. But Bren didn't know that Cade had gone into the workshop twice early in the morning to check the blanks. He found a defect. Once he set a defective blank aside. Bren didn't notice that the defective one had disappeared. It was just that all the blanks turned out to be good that morning. Bren decided the batch was a success. Miller Hale brought a sack of flour to the tavern. For free. He set it on the counter and said, "For the broth." Father looked at the sack, at Cade, at the sack. "What broth?" Cade shrugged. "I bring Miss Hale broth in the evenings. Mom gave me the recipe." Father looked at Mother. Mother looked at Cade. With that look. "I didn't give you the recipe for sick broth." "I don't have a recipe." "Cade, you do. I just put it together." Mother opened her mouth, closed it, shook her head, and for the first time since the wedding day, she smiled at him. Not with pity, not with sympathy, with pride. A small, cautious, but pride. Cade remembered that smile. It was worth more than all the interest in the gold window. But not everything was going smoothly. Isabel Cross sat in the tavern every evening, watching, quiet, gray eyes. Cade brought her tea, sometimes soup. She accepted it, thanked him. But she watched. In the 6th week, she spoke to Cade longer than usual. He was wiping the table next to her. She suddenly said, "You know your father's knee wasn't supposed to heal." Cade kept wiping, steadily, calmly. His heart beat a little harder. "What do you mean?" "Your priestess told me. An 8-year-old joint injury. B-rank healing won't fix it. And he's been walking without a cane for 3 weeks. Cade shrugged. "The tea helped. Herbal. Mom gave me the recipe." Isabel looked at him. Gray eyes, calm. But something was stirring behind them. Something that was searching. Herbal tea doesn't heal an 8-year-old injury. B-rank healing doesn't heal it. But F-rank tea does. Her voice was even. No accusation, no threat. Just a fact. Cade stopped wiping the table. He turned to her, looked her in the eyes. "Mom knows the recipe. You can ask her. She'll say the tea is mint and licorice and honey. Nothing special. Just good tea every evening. The body did the rest." He spoke calmly, confidently, like a man who isn't lying. Because technically, he wasn't lying. The tea was exactly that. Mint, licorice, honey. The rest was in the proportions, in the warmth of his hands, in the intention, in the 30% of healing power he possessed when he brewed the first mug. Isabel can't see that. True sight sees active skills. Cade hadn't activated anything. He was brewing tea, with his hands, without a system. He was just brewing tea very well. Isabel was silent, for a long time. Then she nodded. "Good tea." Cade returned behind the counter. His hands weren't shaking, but his back was wet. It was close, too close. She didn't believe it. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't prove it. She couldn't see it, because Cade wouldn't let her see it. The golden window flashed. Warning: suspect Isabel Cross's suspicion level. High. Recommendation: reduce activity. Reduce activity. That meant stopping the broth, stopping the help, stopping the healing, stopping being who he had become over the past month. Cade clenched his teeth. No, he wouldn't stop. But he would be more careful, more discreetly. Linnea's mother would get the broth. But Cade would cook it at home, in his own kitchen, in the morning, when Isabel went into town. And it wouldn't be him delivering it, but Linnea. She would pick up the jug from the tavern herself, every evening, just like a regular dinner for a sick mother. No Cade at the mill at night. No visits, no traces. Linnea would pick up the jug and carry it home. Cade stood behind the bar and smiled guiltily. F rank. Nothing special. Winter dragged on. Snow blanketed Haven Gate with a white blanket. The tavern stayed open. Adventurers came and went. The border rumbled quietly and far away. Sometimes the wounded arrived. His mother treated them. Cade helped. He cut bandages. He carried water. And he watched. Healing crept upward. 47. 48. Every wounded adventurer was a lesson. Every cut was a page in a textbook. His mother didn't notice how her son was soaking it all in. Or maybe she did and kept quiet. Because she had said, "I'm here, whenever you want." And she waited, patiently, the way mothers wait. On the 35th day, Cade received something unexpected. He was helping his mother with an adventurer who had a broken arm. His mother was setting the bone. Cade was holding it. The adventurer was gritting his teeth. Cade held his arm and felt it. Not the bone. A skill. The adventurer activated a skill from the pain, reflexively. Golden window. Skill detected. Bone fortification. Rank D. Type. Defensive. Passive. Strengthens bone tissue. Cade held the adventurer's hand and felt the bone beneath his fingers harden slightly. Learning initiated. 2%. New skill. 9th. Defensive. Passive. Each new skill expanded his understanding of how the body works. Healing taught him to treat. Iron skin taught him to protect the skin. Bone fortification taught him to protect the bones. 3 facets of a single knowledge. The body. How it works. How it breaks. How it is repaired. The golden window flashed. Information. The combination of healing and bone strengthening unlocks a branch. Deep healing. Available at 50% healing and 20% bone strengthening. Deep healing. Branch. Not a new skill. A combination of 2 existing ones. Like how he combined herbalism and healing for the broth. Only deeper. More serious. If he reaches 50% in healing and 20% in bone strengthening, he'll be able to treat not only soft tissue, but also bones, joints, ligaments, what his mother couldn't do. Cade treated the adventurer's arm, applied a splint. The adventurer thanked him, left. Cade stood in the kitchen and looked at his hands. 9 skills, 1 month, and he'd only just begun. On the 42nd day, Maggie O'Brien arrived in Haven Gate. Cade recognized her by the sound. The tavern door flew open with a bang that nearly ripped the hinges off. A red-haired woman in leather armor, with a crossbow on her back, barged into the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, green eyes, a scar on her chin, a smile that lit up her whole face. "Well, hello there, Iron Knee. Who else is still alive here?" The father behind the bar looked up, smiled, for the first time that day. "Maggie, how long has it been?" 6 months. "Don't flatter me." She tossed her bag on the floor, walked up to the bar, hugged her father over the counter, tightly, like a man. "Pour me something. I'm coming from the border. It's hell out there." Maggie O'Brien, B rank, sharpshot, crossbowman, veteran of the border campaigns. Cade knew her. She stopped by twice a year, in the spring and fall. She drank, joked around, told stories that made the adventurers at the neighboring tables turn pale. Then she'd head back to the border. Cade had always thought Maggie was the funniest person he knew. Now he looked at her differently. The golden window flashed. Skill detected. Sharp shot. Rank B. Type. Combat. Ranged. But Cade wasn't looking at the skill. He was looking at Maggie, at the way she sat, with her back to the wall, facing the door. A fighter's habit. The way her hand rested on the table. Her fingers trembled slightly. Slightly. Barely noticeable. Not from the cold. The way she laughed. Loudly. Widely. Too widely. Like people who are used to drowning out what's inside with noise. And her eyes. Green. Bright. With a shadow that didn't fade even when her face was smiling. Cade handed her a beer. Maggie looked at him. Froze. Oh, little Winters, all grown up. She looked him over, approvingly. Heard he'd picked up a skill, that he'd gotten his share. Cade smiled. Observation. F rank. Maggie whistled. Well, it happens. But he's got a cute face. You won't go hungry. She slapped him on the shoulder with enough force to make Cade stagger. Then she turned to her father and started talking about the border. The monsters are getting smarter. 3rd year in a row. They used to move in herds. Now flanking maneuvers, ambushes, traps. B ranks are dying. A ranks can't handle it. The guild is losing people faster than it's getting new ones. She spoke cheerfully, like a joke, but Cade heard. There was a weight behind her words. Every name she didn't mention was the name of someone who hadn't returned. That evening Maggie drank. A lot. She laughed. She sang. She pounded on the table. The adventurers in the hall sang along. The tavern was roaring. Cade worked. He brought mugs, cleared the empties, made sure Maggie didn't break another bench. She'd broken a bench on her last visit. His father still brought it up. By midnight, the hall was empty. The adventurers had gone their separate ways. Maggie sat alone, a mug in front of her. The 6th, or the 7th. She wasn't counting. Cade was wiping down the tables. Maggie stared into her mug. Hey, little one. Cade approached. You knew Tibrahan. Cade knew. Tibrahan, a fortress on the northern border. It fell a year ago. A garrison of 30 adventurers. Only one came back. I know. Maggie nodded, slowly. 30 men. Good men. Not perfect, but good. And me. She fell silent. Cade waited. Sometimes I don't sleep. She said it quietly. No smile, no joke, just a fact. Like the weather. I close my eyes and see. Faces, not monsters. Theirs. The ones who stood by. The ones who didn't get up. She raised the mug, drank, set it down. I can't sleep without this. She pointed to the mug. Empty. I haven't slept without this for a year. Cade stood beside her, silent. Didn't comfort her. Didn't say everything would be okay. Didn't say she was strong. He just stood there. Maggie looked at him. From the bottom up. Green eyes, wet at the edges. Why are you just standing there? Pour me some more. Cade shook his head. No. Maggie frowned. What do you mean, no? You mean that's enough for today? You're turning me down. F rank. Little boy. Cade, calm down. Your liver will thank you. In the morning. Maggie looked at him. A second. 2. Then she burst out laughing. Loudly. But with real laughter. Not the wide kind that hid the shadow. Real. Short. Surprised. I like you, little one. Okay. Good night. She stood up, swayed, walked toward the stairs, stopped, turned around. If you were 10 years older, I'd steal you away. She left. Cade stood in the empty hall. The golden window glowed quietly. Skill detected nearby. Calm the mind. Rank C, bearer. Wandering priestess Vindal. Located in the temple of Havengate. Cade reread it. Calm the mind. C rank. A priestess in the temple. A skill that calms the mind. Helps with nightmares. With insomnia. With what Maggie had been carrying inside her for a year. Tomorrow. Tomorrow he'll go to the temple. He'll help the priestess. He'll carry water. He'll sweep the floor. And he'll watch. How she works. How she calms those who come to her for help. And he'll start to learn. Slowly. Bit by bit. For Maggie, who hadn't slept without a drink for a year. Who laughed so she wouldn't scream. Who was the only one to return from Tibrahan and couldn't forgive herself for it. Cade cleared away the mugs, closed the tavern, got into bed. The golden window flashed. List of active tasks. healing for Linnea's mother, blacksmithing for Ayla, soup for Isabel, calming the mind for Maggie, a knee for his father, decoctions for his mother. Cade closed his eyes. The list grew. People nearby. Everyone needs something different. And Cade knew exactly what, because he watched. He listened. He remembered. 18 years. The golden window flashed one last time. A reminder. Novice Isabel Cross hadn't sent a letter in 14 days. The previous interval between letters, 3 days. Cade opened his eyes. 14 days without letters. Before, every 3 days. She had stopped writing, stopped reporting, or she had begun to doubt. Cade rolled onto his side. Snow was falling outside the window. Quiet, heavy. The second night of the second month. The list was growing. Time was short. But Cade Winters was in no hurry. He was never in a hurry. He just kept moving forward, step by step, percent by percent, one mug at a time, one person at a time. The golden window went dark. Cade fell asleep. Maggie O'Brien arrived in Haven Gate, a B-rank crossbowman suffering from PTSD after her squad's death in Tibrahan. She hasn't slept without alcohol for a year. Cade learned that a priestess with the calm mind skill was at the city temple and decided to study it to help Maggie. The golden window reported that Isabel had stopped sending letters for 50 days, which might mean she had begun to doubt her mission. The priestess, Vindel, was an old woman with gray hair and hands that smelled of incense. The Haven Gate Temple was small, one room, a stone altar, benches for 20 people. The priestess lived alone at the temple. Cade arrived in the morning. He offered to help. Sweep up, bring in firewood, fix the bench that was creaking. The priestess looked at him, at his tavern keeper's apron, at his hands, at his face. "You're a Winter's son." "Yes, F rank." "Yes." She snorted. "Come in. The firewood is in the shed." Cade worked, silently, diligently. He didn't try to make small talk. He didn't ask questions. He just swept, carried firewood, fixed the bench. The priestess went about her business, lit candles, prepared incense, received parishioners. There weren't many of them. People went to the temple less often in winter, but one came. An old farmer with trembling hands. He sat down on the bench. The priestess approached, sat down next to him, placed her hand on his shoulder, and began to speak. Quietly, slowly. The words were simple, about the weather, about winter, about how things would be easier in the spring. But it wasn't about the words. Cade stood in the corner with a broom and watched, at the priestess's hand, at the farmer's shoulder, at how something flowed between them, invisible, warm. A golden window flashed. Calming of the mind. Rank C. Activation recorded. Method: tactile contact plus verbal rhythm. Speech frequency synchronizes with the patient's breathing. The nervous system receives a safety signal. Study initiated. 2%. The farmer left half an hour later. His hands were shaking less. Cade swept the floor again. The priestess was watching him. "You didn't come for firewood." Cade froze. The priestess smiled. "I'm old, not blind. You were looking at my hands when I was talking to Tom." Cade set down the broom, leaned it against the wall, turned around. "I have a friend who doesn't sleep. A year. She saw things she shouldn't have seen, and now she can't close her eyes without it coming back." The priestess was silent, listening. Cade continued. "I'm not asking you to heal her. I'm asking you to teach me what to do, how to help. I'm F rank. Observation. I can't do what you do, but maybe I can do at least something." Lies and truth are so tightly intertwined that they're indistinguishable. He couldn't do what she did, not at 2%, but at 20, he'll be able to. C rank takes weeks. The priestess lived in Haven Gate permanently. He could come every day. The priestess looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. "Come, I'll show you." Cade came every morning. He swept. He carried firewood. He listened. The priestess didn't teach him a skill. She taught him presence. How to sit next to someone who's hurting. How to breathe evenly so that another's breath falls into sync. How to be silent so that the silence doesn't weigh down, but holds. The golden window counted. 3%, 5, 8, 1% every day, sometimes 2. The priestess showed him a lot, explained, told stories. She was a good teacher, patient, like a mother. On the 10th day of lessons, Cade came to the tavern in the evening and found Maggie at the bar. 5th mug. Glassy eyes, a frozen smile. The man behind the bar looked at her with an expression Cade knew. Pity. Not for Maggie. For himself. Because he couldn't help. Cade walked over, sat down next to her. Maggie glanced sideways. "Oh, the little guy. Going to take my drink away again." "No, not today." Maggie raised an eyebrow. Progress. Cade pulled a small bag out of his pocket. He placed it on the bar in front of her. "What's that?" "Herbs. For tea. Before bed." Maggie looked at the bag, then at Cade. "You're offering me tea, instead of beer?" "Not instead. Along with it. Drink the beer, then drink the tea. See what happens." Maggie burst out laughing. "You're a little nutcase." "I know." She took the bag, stuck it in her pocket. Cade wasn't sure it would work. 12% calm mind, herbalism 56, gentle hands 31, a combination. He'd brewed the herbs that morning, especially for her. Lavender for breathing, valerian for the muscles, mint for warmth, and something from the priestess. Not a skill, a principle. The priestess said that calm of mind begins with the body. Relax your muscles and your mind will start to let go. Relax your breathing and your memory will stop screaming. Cade couldn't put the skill in the pouch, but he could put herbs that did the same thing. Slower, weaker, but they worked. The next morning, the door to Cade's room shook from the impact. He jumped up, heart in his throat. He opened it. Maggie was standing in the hallway, hair tousled, eyes red, but not from drinking, from sleep. "What did you do to me?" Cade blinked. "I slept. 8 hours, no drinking, no nightmares, 8 hours. I haven't slept 8 hours straight since Tibrahana." She spoke quickly, loudly. Her hands were shaking, but not like yesterday, differently, from something closer to joy than to fear. Cade leaned against the doorframe. "It's just tea. Herbs. Lavender and valerian. Nothing special." Maggie looked at him. Green eyes. Wet. "Nothing special." He says nothing special. I haven't slept like a human being in a year and he says nothing special. She stepped forward. Cade stepped back. Maggie grabbed him by the shoulders, looked him in the eyes. Close. He could see every freckle on her nose. Tiny. "I'm either going to kiss you all over or kill you right now. Choose." Cade swallowed. "The first." Maggie leaned in and kissed him. On the forehead. Firmly. Like a seal. Then she let go. Turned around. Walked down the hallway. Halfway there she turned back. More tea. Tonight. And tomorrow. And the day after. And every day while I'm here. Got it. Got it. She was gone. Cade stood in the doorway. His forehead was burning. The golden window flickered. Mind calm. 13%. Motivation increased. From 12 to 13 in a single night. Not from observation, from results. The skill grew when it helped. When it did what it was created to do. The golden window knew this. Cade knew it now too. The next 2 weeks passed in a rhythm that had become familiar. In the morning, the temple and the priestess. In the afternoon, the kitchen and his mother. In the evening, the tavern and everyone. Broth for Mother Linnea, tea for Maggie, soup for Isabel. Work at Brenna's next to Isla. Herbs from Henry. Goats at Granny Morse's. Every day. Every percentage point. By the 60th day, the skills on the altar looked like this. Healing, 53%. Inner vision, 17. Iron skin, 32. Herbalism, 61. Herb identification, 26. Soft hands, 35. Metal reading, 15. Blacksmithing, 22. Calming the mind, 21. Bone strengthening, 9. 10 skills. 2 months. Not a single one had reached its peak. They were all growing, slowly, stubbornly, like roots. The golden window flashed on the evening of the 60th day. Information. A detachment of the Royal Guard will arrive in Haven Gate tomorrow. Composition. 6 people. Commander. Lieutenant Nola Winters. Rank A. Iceblade. Cade dropped his mug. It shattered on the floor. Father turned around. Cade, what's wrong? Nothing, Dad. Slippery. He bent down, picked up the shards. His hands were shaking. Nola. Sister. A rank. Lieutenant of the Royal Guard. The pride of the family. Who didn't come on the day of the altar. Who didn't see him get an F rank. Who didn't know that in 2 months her younger brother had become the most dangerous person in Haven Gate in just 2 months. She was coming here. Tomorrow. With 6 guards. Cade stood with the shards in his hands and thought. Nola had known him his whole life. Knew his every gesture, every habit, every inflection. Deceiving his mother was difficult. Deceiving Isabel was dangerous. Deceiving Nola would be impossible. Nola Winters entered Haven Gate through the north gate at dawn. Cade stood at the window of his room and watched. 6 figures on horseback. The white cloaks of the Royal Guard. At the front, a tall woman with a white braid and a scar across her eyebrow. A sword at her belt. Back straight, chin lifted. Cade hadn't seen his sister in 4 months. Not since she left for the border at the end of summer. She didn't come on altar day. She sent a letter. A short one. Duty. Can't. Sorry. Mother cried. Father said he understood. Cade said it was all right. And he was glad. Because Nola shouldn't have had to see him get an F rank. She shouldn't have had to stand next to their mother, clenching her fists and feeling guilty that she got everything and he got nothing. Now she was riding down Main Street, and Cade looked down at her and saw something he hadn't seen before. Fatigue. Not physical, something else. Her shoulders were slightly lower than they should be for a guard lieutenant. Her left hand on the reins was too steady. A rib, or a shoulder. Something hurt on her left side. The golden window flashed. Skill detected. Iceblade. Rank A. Type. Combat. Elemental. Warning. Studying rank A skills requires months of continuous observation. It is recommended not to begin study without long-term contact. Cade closed the window. He went downstairs. His mother was already in the hall, standing by the door, hands clasped, just like on her wedding day. Only now, out of joy. The door opened. Nola entered. Tall. A head taller than his mother, half a head taller than Cade. Mom. His mother rushed to her, hugged her. Nola hugged her back, with one arm, her right. She held her left close to her side, her rib. Cade was right. His father came out from behind the counter, without a cane. Nola saw him, froze. Dad, you. She looked at his legs, at his gait, steady, no limp. Dad smiled. Cade helped. Some kind of tea. I don't know what he puts in it, but it works. Nola turned to Cade, gray eyes, just like her mother's, but sharper. The eyes of a man accustomed to assessing a threat in a split second. Cade. Hi, Nola. She walked over, hugged him, tightly. She pressed her left side against him, and he felt her flinch slightly. Pain. A rib, definitely. He hugged her gently. He didn't press on her left side. She noticed. He could tell by the way her eyes narrowed slightly. She noticed that he had noticed. "You've grown." "No, you've gotten smaller." She snorted, almost a smile. Cade could see she was tired, that her rib hurt, that there were dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, that her left arm was weaker than her right, that she hadn't come on vacation, but on a mission. The guards stayed out on the street, 6 of them. A full patrol. Not a vacation. Duty. Nola had come to Haven Gate on business and stopped by to see her family because it was on the way. The first day passed in conversation. Her mother fed her. Her father told stories. Nola listened. She smiled. Sometimes she winced when she turned too sharply. Cade sat nearby and said nothing. He watched his sister. The golden window was silent. He hadn't activated scouting. Not here. Not in front of her. Nola was A rank. Her sense of danger had been honed over years on the border. If Cade activated something near her, she might not see it, but she would feel it. That evening, Nola went up to the room upstairs. Cade waited an hour. He went up. He knocked. "Come in." She was sitting on the bed, without armor, in a simple shirt, her left hand pressed against her side. A rib. Cade entered. He closed the door. He set a mug on the table. Tea, to help her sleep, with honey. Nola looked at the mug, then at him. That very tea. The one that healed Dad's knee. The one that shouldn't work but does. "Cade, what's going on with you? Straight up, no beating around the bush, like a sword." Nola had always been like that. "Nothing. F-rank observation. I watch, I memorize, I pick herbs. Nothing supernatural." Nola looked at him. For a long time. "You know I have a broken rib. You hugged me so as not to press on the left side. You couldn't have known that. I just arrived." He didn't flinch. "You walked through the door and held your left arm close. Hugged Mom with your right. Winced when you turned." That's Nola's observation. F-rank. Useless, but accurate. She was silent. A second. 2. 5. Then. F-rank. Who brews tea that heals an 8-year-old trauma? F-rank. Who knows which herbs help with insomnia? The red-haired adventuress downstairs drank his tea today and said she slept for the first time in a year. F-rank. Who can see a broken rib through clothing? Cade. I'm not an idiot. Silence. The fireplace crackled. Outside the window, the wind whipped the snow. Cade stood by the door and looked at his sister. At the woman who had felt guilty her whole life for getting an A rank while her brother got nothing. At the guard lieutenant with a broken rib who had come home to find a younger brother who wasn't who he was supposed to be. He made a decision, not with his head, with his heart. Because it was Nola. Because she was sitting in front of him with a broken rib and eyes filled with tears she would never show. Because for 22 years she had been strong for both of them and deserved the truth. Not all of it. Half. "Sit down." Nola sat down. Cade sat down next to her. "My skill isn't F-rank observation." Nola didn't move. Didn't even blink. She waited. The public window shows F-rank. The real window is different. I can learn other people's skills by observing, by touching, by understanding how they work. It's not copying. It's studying, like a craft. Slow, long, percent by percent. Silence. Long. Nola sat motionless, her face stony. Then, "How many?" 10. So far, 10 skills. In 2 months. Nola closed her eyes. Opened them. He saw her hands tremble slightly. Not from fear. From something else. "Cade, if anyone finds out..." "I know." The hands of the beginning, the inquisitors, death. I know. She stood up, walked across the room, stopped by the window, with her back to him, shoulders tense. That's why you didn't want me to come on the day of the altar. Cade blinked. No. I didn't know then. I found out in that moment, at the altar. She turned around. Her eyes were shining. On the day of the altar. You found out on the day of the altar. And ever since. 2 months. 1. In this city. With the hand of the beginning in the tavern. Cade froze. You know about her. Nola snorted, bitterly. I'm a lieutenant in the guard. I know every hand of the beginning agent in the northern provinces. Isabel Cross, true sight. She's been here since the first week. And you lived under the same roof with her for 2 months, and she didn't expose you? Cade shrugged. I'm careful. Nola looked at him, and suddenly sat back down on the bed, heavily, like someone whose legs have given out. She buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders trembled. Once. Nola. She lifted her face. Her eyes were wet. A smile. A real one. The first all day. You're not useless. No. You've never been useless. And I'm 22. She didn't finish. Cade sat down next to her. He put his hand on her shoulder. The right one, not the left. I know. She turned toward him, looked at him, and hugged him, tightly, with both arms. Her left rib throbbed with pain, but she didn't pay it any mind. Cade hugged her back. The golden window flashed quietly. No interest rates, no warnings, just a single line. Connection established. Trust. Cade closed his eyes. Nola was breathing evenly, just as the priestess had taught her. Only Nola didn't know that was the right way. She was just breathing. Because for the first time in a long while, she didn't have to be strong. A minute later she pulled away, wiped her eyes, quickly, like a soldier. Show me. What? Show me what you can do, right now. Cade picked up the mug of tea. He handed it to her. Drink it. Nola drank it. 15 minutes later, the pain in her rib had subsided. She sat on the bed and touched her side, gently. Her face showed surprise and something else, something warm. Tea, she said. Tea. That heals broken ribs. It doesn't heal them. It takes the pain away. The healing will take a week. If you stay for a week, I'll heal your rib completely. Nola looked at him. A younger brother, F rank, who's offering to heal an A rank's broken rib with tea. She laughed, quietly, through tears that hadn't yet dried. You're impossible. I know. Nola stayed for a week. The week with Nola was the most dangerous and most important week of Cade's life. Dangerous because Nola and the guard squad were in the tavern at the same time as Isabel and True Sight. Important because Cade was observing an A rank up close for the first time. Every day. With permission. Nola trained outside the city. The guards were with her. Cade brought them lunch. Hot soup in a mess tin, bread, tea. Just a simple boy from the tavern. None of the guards paid him any mind. To them, he was the lieutenant's younger brother, F rank. Poor guy. But the soup was good. Cade set down the pot, handed out bread, and watched. Nola worked with her sword, the ice blade, A rank. When she drew the sword, the air around the blade changed. Not ice, not frost, something finer. The temperature dropped around the blade within a hand's breadth. The metal became something bigger. Cade saw this with his own eyes. In the golden window unfolded before him a diagram that was huge and complex and beautiful, like a cathedral blueprint. The ice blade, A rank, study begun, 0.3%, 0.3% after a whole day of observation. A rank, months. The golden window wasn't kidding, but Cade wasn't discouraged. He wasn't going to study the ice blade in a week. He was going to understand it. Understand how A rank works, how it differs from D and C, where the line between ranks lies. And the golden window provided the answer. Not in percentages, in sensations. D rank was like a stream, simple, straight, one action, one direction. C rank was like a river, wider, deeper, several currents at once. A rank. A rank was like the sea, bottomless, multi-layered. Every movement Nola made with her sword contained dozens of micro-movements she performed without thinking, because 4 years on the border had hammered them into her muscles, into her blood, into her breath. It was a skill that couldn't be copied, only cultivated. Cade returned to the tavern and worked. In the evenings, he treated Nola's rib, a herbal compress, the warmth of his hands. Gentle hands, 36% plus. Healing, 55% plus. Bone strengthening, 12%. Directed at a specific person. At his sister. At Nola, who had a scar across her eyebrow and a white braid and eyes full of guilt that she had carried for 22 years. The rib was healing. Day after day, Nola could feel it. Every morning she moved more freely. Every evening she winced less. On the 4th day, she raised her left hand and clenched her fist. Full range of motion. No pain. She looked at her fist, then at Kada. She said nothing, just nodded. Words were, but the danger was growing. Isabel saw it. She saw that Nola arrived with a broken rib and 4 days later was swinging a sword without restriction. She saw that the guards were eating soup from the tavern and looked fresher after training than before. She saw that Cade was bringing food, and somehow everything around them was getting better. One evening, Isabel approached the bar when Cade was alone. She placed her hands on the wood. Gray eyes. Calm. "I want to ask you something." Cade was wiping a mug. Steady. Calm. "Ask away." "Have you ever heard of people with 2 skills?" Cade didn't flinch. "No, that's impossible. 1 person, 1 skill. A law of the pantheon." Isabel nodded, slowly. "Yes, a law." She paused. "But if it were possible, what would that look like?" Cade set down the mug, looked at her. "I don't know. It would probably look like a very lucky person, who just has good luck, with tea, with soup, with recipes." Silence. Isabel looked at him. He looked at her. 2 people who knew the truth, or were close to it. "You're not a novice," Cade said it quietly. Not as an accusation, as a fact. And Isabel didn't move. "No. You're from the hand." "Yes," Cade nodded. "You're here to find the one who breaks the law." She was silent, for a long time. Then, "I'm here to find the distortion. A rumor about a man who does what he shouldn't be able to do." Cade picked up the mug, began to wipe it, and found it. Isabel looked away. At the room, at the fireplace, at Maggie, who was sleeping in an armchair by the fire. Sober. Her face as calm as a child's. "I found a tavern, where people recover, where soup cures insomnia, where an F-rank boy knows things no one else does." She turned to him. "I found you, Cade." Silence. Heavy. Cade stood with a mug. His hands didn't tremble. His face was calm. Inside, everything tightened into a knot. "And what are you going to do?" Isabel was silent. 10 seconds. 20. Then she picked up her mug of tea, took a sip, set it down. "I don't know." She walked over to her table by the window. Cade stood behind the counter and breathed, slowly, steadily, just as the priestess had taught him. She knew. She knew and didn't tell him. 14 days without letters. She stopped writing not because she had nothing to say, but because she didn't want to say what she knew. Cade looked at her across the room. She was sitting by the window, alone, with cooling tea, with eyes that were older than her face, and he realized she was just like everyone else in this tavern. A person in pain, a person who needed something. Only her pain was more complicated. She had served a pantheon that lied. She sensed it. Maybe she even knew it. And now she sat in the tavern of the enemy she was supposed to turn in but couldn't. Because the enemy was making her Windmer soup. Because the enemy was an 18-year-old boy who treated his father's knee and brought broth to his neighbor and smiled guiltily. Cade took a new mug, poured fresh tea, hot but not scalding, carried it to her table, set it down. This one's warm, just the way you like it. She looked up. Her eyes were wet at the edges. Thank you. Cade returned behind the counter. The golden window flashed. Connection established. Trust level. Unstable. Unstable. But established. It was the beginning. The blizzard came on the night of the 70th day. The wind howled outside the tavern walls. Snow pelted the windows. Haven Gate stood still. No one went out. A fire burned in the iron knee. Big. Hot. Father had stoked the fire that morning, and it hadn't died down since. Nola was supposed to have left yesterday. The blizzard had delayed her. The guards were stationed in the hall, 6 of them by the wall. Quiet. Disciplined. They ate what they were given. They didn't complain. Nola sat at the table by the fireplace, a mug in her hands. Her rib had healed completely. Her left hand worked, a sword at her belt. But she wasn't in a hurry to leave, blizzard or not. Everyone was in the hall. Father was behind the bar, wiping down a barrel. Habit. When there's nothing to do, the hands work anyway. Without a cane. 3 months without a cane. Her knee didn't hurt, even in the blizzard. Mother by the fireplace. Mending. Calm. Her hands didn't tremble. They hadn't trembled in a long time. Linnea came in the morning. Frozen. Happy. Mom baked bread today, by herself, for the first time in 6 months. Linnea's mother got up every day, walked around the house, cooked. Kata's broth had pushed the illness back. It hadn't cured it. 56% healing wasn't enough. But the cold spot inside had shrunk by half. The body was winning. Slowly. Stubbornly. Just like Miss Hale herself. Linnea sat at the table with a mug of hot milk and laughed. Her freckles danced. Her red braids were tousled by the wind. She came every day. No longer just for the broth. Maggie was sprawled in an armchair by the fireplace, her feet on the table. The crossbow leaned against the wall. She slept every night, without a drink. Kata's tea was working, 13 days in a row. She still drank beer, but 1 mug a night, not 6, not 7. 1, for the taste, not to forget. The nightmares hadn't gone away. They came sometimes. But now she'd wake up and fall asleep again. Because her body remembered that sleep was safe. Because the tea told her every evening what the priestess had told the farmer. You're safe. You can let go. Ayla sat by the wall, silently, sharpening a knife. Not an old one, a new one. The one Cade had made, 2 weeks ago, at night, in Brenna's workshop, when everyone had left. He'd measured her palm while she slept at the table in the tavern. Small, narrow, her left hand. He'd forged the handle to fit her hand exactly. The blade was made of an alloy they'd found together, iron and copper, thin, strong. In the morning, he placed the knife next to her plate at breakfast. Ayla picked it up, looked at it, at the handle, at the blade, at the balance. She held it silently for 5 minutes. Then she said, "You're strange," Cade said. "I know," she said. "I'm staying," he said. "Okay." Since then, the knife hasn't left her belt. Sora Jong arrived 3 days ago. Small, skinny, in an oversized coat, long black hair, eyes full of fear. Cade heard about her from Granny Morse, a girl from a forest village. The skill, hear plants. E rank, considered useless. In the village they called her strange. She came to Haven Gate looking for work. Any job. Cade met her at the gate, frozen, hungry. He brought her to the tavern, fed her, gave her a room. On the house. Winter promotion. Sora didn't smile. She looked up at him. Dark eyes. Wary. Why? Cade crouched down in front of her. Because there's a blizzard outside and you're freezing. That's enough. She lived in the tavern for 3 days. She said nothing. Ate little. Looked at everyone from under her brows. On the second day, Cade approached her in the evening. You can hear plants. Sora flinched. Who said that? Granny Morse. Sora lowered her eyes. A useless skill. Cade shook his head. Show me. Tell me what they're saying to you. Sora looked up. No one had ever asked her to show them before. No one.